Welcome to the Morning Walk with Murty Digital Stroll. Imagine, just for a second, walking into a dense, completely isolated forest in central India.
Right. Totally alone.
Yeah, completely alone. And you're under this constant, heavy shadow of Naxalite violence, right? Your only goal is to walk into a suspicious, deeply impoverished village and convince parents to do something they have never, ever done before.
Send their daughters to school.
Exactly. And you do this not just once, but over and over, crossing rivers on foot for, 40 years.
Wow. I mean, it's a scenario that just defies every modern concept of scale or, quick fix solutions. It's just a lifetime of invisible grinding effort.
It really is. So I'm stepping in today as your architect of Antaryami, and I'll be looking at this incredible source material through the lens of a strategic auditor. Because we really need to examine how large-scale, resilient change is actually built in the real world.
And I am sitting across from you as the mentor of the Antaryami VA Academy. I'm bringing that essential wisdom seeker perspective, focusing on, what we call Gurukul 2.0.
Spot on. So for you listening, we know you're constantly bombarded with surface-level information. Today, our mission is to filter this specific, remarkable narrative through our digital prism.
Yeah, we aren't just summarizing a biography here. We are trying to extract the true legacy code, like the foundational operating principles of systemic empowerment.
And the subject of today's digital stroll is Dr. Budhri Tati from Bastar. We're auditing a woman who looked at an environment defined by extreme constraints, poverty, severe isolation, violence, and she effectively rewrote the future of an entire region.
Starting from absolute zero, which is just incredible. And she ultimately earned the Padma Shri, one of India's highest civilian honors.
Right. But as a strategic auditor, my immediate question is the mechanism. Like, how does one individual actually build this massive infrastructure of empowerment from scratch?
Well, if we are searching for the root code of her work, we have to honestly evaluate the starting parameters of her life. I mean, Dr. Tati was born into a tribal family in Dantewada,
Which is a seriously tough environment.
Oh, absolutely. It wasn't just lacking in resources. It was actively hostile to development. You have systemic poverty, intense geographical isolation. I mean, these are communities cut off from modern infrastructure.
Not to mention the overarching, very real presence of Naxal violence, just dictating the daily rhythm of life.
Right. Exactly.
So let's look at that from a structural standpoint. When you audit an environment like that, you are looking at a society locked in a survival paradigm.
Yeah, pure day-to-day existence.
Exactly. The sources explicitly note that for many families in this region, sending daughters to school simply was not a priority. And honestly, if we drop our modern biases for a second, that makes complete logical sense.
It really does. When you are just trying to keep your family fed and safe for the week, long-term educational investments are completely irrational.
Right, because a daughter's labor in the field or the home is a tangible asset. A classroom is this abstract luxury.
That is the exact psychological barrier right there. The entire system is coded for immediate survival. And this brings us to the first major insight of our Gurukul session today. How do you override a system like that?
It's a huge question.
It didn't start with external funding or, a grand strategic white paper. It started as an internal realization.
An internal realization? How so?
Well, the sources indicate that education fundamentally changed Dr. Tati's own life. She experienced that transformation firsthand, but the legacy code here, the principle we want to extract, is the conscious choice she made next.
Which was what?
She decided her personal transformation could not remain isolated.
Which is, frankly, the exact opposite of what usually happens. Usually when someone acquires a high-value skill or education in a deeply deprived area, they use it as an exit strategy.
Exactly. They get a comfortable job, they move to a city, and they leave the failing system behind.
But she didn't do that.
No, the human instinct is to escape the constraints, but Dr. Tati chose to stay and dismantle them. It ceased to be a career path and became a lifelong mission. Yeah, and if we reflect on this through the lens of Project Antaryami, this is a profound challenge to you, the listener. It forces you to ask, what is that singular transformative realization in your own life?
That's a great question. Like, what is a truth or skill you possess that is so powerful it could completely reshape the lives of others if you simply chose not to keep it to yourself?
Exactly. It demands that we move from passive consumers of our own success to active architects of our communities.
I love that. But I want to dig into the actual implementation here. because the reality of how she achieved this is staggering.
The physical effort alone is just mind-blowing.
Right. We are talking about nearly 4 decades of relentless physical effort. She didn't just advocate from a desk. She walked through forests. She crossed rivers.
Reaching remote settlements in South Bastar where many girls had never even seen a school.
Yeah. Over 40 years, she covered more than 570 villages on foot.
Just sit with that number for a moment. 570 villages.
Manually. I mean, it completely disrupts how we normally think about infrastructure. Today, we talk about scaling up and migrating systems as if it's just, pushing an update to a cloud server.
Right, just a click of a button.
Yeah, but she was doing this manually. She was building a network of human potential node by node, village by village, forest by forest.
It's unbelievable.
But here is where I get stuck on the logistics. The physical toll of walking for 40 years is immense, but the psychological toll of facing constant rejection must have been heavier. How did she actually convince these parents?
And that is where the Gurukul 2.0 philosophy becomes really visible. The real obstacle wasn't the rivers or the Naxal-controlled forests, although those were incredibly dangerous.
So what was it?
The true obstacle was the mindset of the parents. The sources emphasize a vital detail. She patiently spoke to them.
Meaning she didn't just march in and lecture them about human rights.
No, she couldn't. She had to sit down, understand their immediate economic fears, and carefully construct an argument that education would change their daughters' futures in a tangible way.
So it's a process of bridging the gap between their daily reality and her long-term vision. But how do you establish that kind of trust? When a stranger walks into an isolated, conflict-ridden village, they're usually viewed with immense suspicion.
You build trust through absolute consistency and radical empathy. She wasn't a bureaucrat visiting once a year in a government vehicle.
Right, she was walking among them.
Exactly. She understood their language, their culture, and their daily struggles because she came from the same roots.
That makes a huge difference.
It does. She proved her investment in their lives by continually showing up despite the physical danger. That kind of presence just disarms suspicion.
Which is a massive lesson in systemic change. You cannot automate trust. You can lay the physical foundation for a school, you can design the most brilliant curriculum, or in the corporate world, you can draft the perfect organizational strategy.
But if you haven't thought down and done the grueling work of changing the mindset of the people involved,
the infrastructure will fail.
Precisely. Systemic change requires addressing the invisible human architecture first. If you don't migrate the mindset, the physical building is useless.
Okay. But as I was auditing the source material, I noticed a major pivot in her strategy. And to be honest, from a strategic auditor's perspective, it looks incredibly risky.
You mean how Dr. Tati's work didn't just stop at getting girls into classrooms?
Yeah, the ecosystem she built began to expand aggressively.
It evolved into a fully holistic structure.
Right. Through her organization, she started establishing hostels for tribal children to support the girls' education. Then, she launched training programs for women through self-help groups.
Teaching them tailoring, weaving, and handicrafts.
Yeah, and then it expands even further into health awareness, sanitation, maternal care, and massive campaigns against alcoholism and domestic violence.
It is a staggering amount of responsibility to take on.
It is. And frankly, in almost any other context, we would call this mission creep. It's the classic failure mode of ambitious projects, right?
Oh, for sure. Spreading your resources way too thin.
Exactly. You start with one clear, measurable goal, educating tribal girls, and suddenly you are running sanitation programs and fighting domestic violence. The risk is that the original education initiative collapses.
Right, so why not just optimize the schooling process?
Exactly. Why take on the entirety of a society's problems?
I completely understand the pushback, and in a vacuum, you would be right. But this is where the Gurukul 2.0 perspective is so critical, because it completely reframes what we consider mission creep.
How so?
Well, Dr. Tati wasn't losing focus. She was recognizing a profound truth about human development. Education cannot execute successfully on corrupted hardware.
Ah, I see. You're saying the classroom is fundamentally dependent on the environment outside of it.
Exactly. Think about the reality of a young tribal girl in this context. If she is facing domestic violence at home, the classroom is irrelevant.
Yeah, of course.
And if she is suffering from entirely preventable diseases due to poor sanitation, she cannot attend school.
And if her father is consuming the family's meager resources through alcoholism, the economic pressure will force her to drop out and work.
Right. Dr. Tati realized that the schooling process is not an isolated variable.
So by establishing hostels, She wasn't just building housing, she was securing the physical environment.
Yes. And by training mothers in tailoring and weaving, she was creating economic stability so the family didn't need the daughter's labor.
Wow. And then taking on the incredibly dangerous task of campaigning against alcoholism and domestic violence in a deeply patriarchal setup.
She was stabilizing the emotional and social environment. She wasn't experiencing mission creep at all. She was systematically mapping out and resolving the dependencies required for her primary mission to survive.
That reframes the entire narrative. She recognized that if you want a plant to grow, you can't just throw seeds on concrete and tell them to try harder. You have to terraform the soil.
Exactly, you have to terraform the soil.
It's brilliant ecosystem architecture. But I want to press on the anti-violence and anti-alcoholism campaigns. That isn't just difficult social work. In a region already fraught with conflict, challenging entrenched male behaviors is physically dangerous.
It is immensely dangerous, and it highlights the depth of her conviction. She prioritized the structural integrity of the community over her own personal safety and comfort.
That takes a lot of courage.
It really does. A true mentor, a true practitioner of the Gurukul philosophy, takes responsibility for the holistic well-being of the student. It's not just about passing on facts.
It's about ensuring the student actually has a world where they can utilize those facts.
Exactly. She patched the vulnerabilities of the entire society to protect the girls she was trying to educate.
It fundamentally changes how we should view leadership. We often think of leadership as highly specialized, right? Staying in your lane and optimizing your specific metric.
Sure, staying focused.
But true systemic leadership requires you to look at the invisible forces dragging down your primary objective and have the courage to address them, even if they aren't technically in your job description.
Exactly. You cannot build a thriving system on top of a rotting foundation.
So let's fast forward and audit the final return on investment. We have 40 years of relentless physical effort. 570 villages connected, and this massive, holistic ecosystem constructed to protect and empower these students.
Right.
What actually happens to a network like that over time?
Well, the sources provide a very clear output. Because of her decades of dedication, many of the young girls she initially convinced to attend school are now teachers, nurses, government employees, and community leaders themselves.
This is the critical network effect. It's fascinating. In systems architecture, the holy grail is a self-sustaining loop, right?
Yes, and she was the original catalyst.
But by empowering these girls, she effectively created hundreds of new catalysts. The students she fought for have now become the load-bearing pillars of the very infrastructure she built.
They are maintaining and expanding the network. When a former tribal student returns to her community as a qualified nurse or a teacher, the paradigm shift becomes permanent.
Because the argument Dr. Tati used to have to make manually, pleading with parents to believe in education, is now self-evident. The proof is living right there in the village.
The system override is complete.
And obviously, this incredible architectural achievement did not go unnoticed. The source material highlights that she received the Padma Shri, one of India's absolute highest civilian honors.
Which is an incredible validation from the state. It's a monumental honor and rightfully deserved.
For sure.
But there is a quieter detail in the text that, from a wisdom seeker's perspective, is actually the ultimate metric of her success.
What's that?
To the people of Bastar, the community she actually served, she's not known by her formal titles. She's known lovingly as Badi Didi.
Elder sister.
Her sister. The Padma Shri is an institutional recognition, but Badi Didi is a title bestowed by the grassroots network she built.
That's a beautiful distinction.
It is. She transitioned from being an external force pushing for change to becoming a beloved, integral piece of the community's identity. She is no longer just a person. She is a living inspiration for generations.
Wow.
Yeah, this is the ultimate embodiment of Project Antaryami's ethos, moving beyond personal success to create a profound, lasting collective legacy.
She didn't just write the legacy code, she became it. I think that is the perfect place to synthesize this for the listener. If we are downloading the core principles from this Gurukul session, the blueprint for how to actually manifest massive change, what are the pillars?
I would distill it into 3 core operational principles. First, change requires an unshakable internal conviction. You cannot impart a transformation you haven't fully committed to yourself.
Right.
Second, you must have the stomach for the invisible, unglamorous work. You have to be willing to walk the 570 villages, having the difficult, patient conversations required to migrate mindsets. You cannot automate human trust.
And the third is recognizing the dependencies.
Yes, the holistic approach. You have to look beyond your immediate metric and secure the environment. If the social ecosystem is broken, your specific intervention will fail. You must have the courage to fix the underlying hardware.
It is a masterclass in systemic reconstruction. Dr. Budhri Tati didn't just overcome her environment, she fundamentally re-architected it for thousands of others.
She proved that the constraints of your environment do not have to dictate the final output of your life.
I want to thank you, the listener, for joining us on this morning walk with Murty Digital Stroll. Taking the time to understand these architectures of change is how we equip ourselves to audit and improve the systems in our own spheres of influence.
Absolutely.
As you continue on your walk, or as you sit down at your desk today, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over. Dr. Budhri Tati faced down crushing poverty, geographical isolation, and the daily threat of violence. She manually walked to over 500 villages over 40 years to rewrite the future of an entire region.
It's just staggering to think about.
It really is. When you look at these seemingly unfixable problems in your own community, the deep dysfunctions in your industry, or even the stubborn obstacles in your own life, are you letting the corrupted environment dictate your code? Or are you ready to start walking your own 570 villages?